Fucking hell, man. Rock and rollers. Shut the fuck up, man. Just want a round of applause. I just spelled $495 worth of beer. Yeah!
Welcome to the Riff Crew. I'm your host, Steve Mitchell, back for another big episode here in the realm. And joining me, as always, is the master of Dungeons and Dragons, Skull. How you doing, mate?
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen in Cyberland. As you know, this is Skull broadcasting from the past, present, and future in the Chamber of the Cosmos. Here with my good friend Steve Oz from Ozland. I'm an on again, off again DC bomb rock band Black Manta. I've been in the DC scene for 35 years or more. I know people from all over the scene. I also worked at the Smithsonian for 20 years, and I've incorporated my love and passion for history with my love and passion for music. As usual, really excited to be here. And once again, we have a very special guest with us here today. It's a real honor once again to have with us one of the godfathers of the fantasy genre. He's also a lyricist and member of Hawkwind and Blue Oyster Cult, and creator of Elric and the Eternal Champion multiverse, Mr. Michael Moorcock. It's good to have you with us again.
Good to be here. It's not such a special guest. I mean, I seem to be here every week nowadays.
Well, it's very special for me and for all of us to have you on the realm, on the show.
Thanks.
But you know, like I said, I probably told you I came up. I figured we should come up with a title, so I created a segment that we call the Eternal Tales of Michael Moorcock. So because we're always talking about all kinds of things, the history, of music and the musical scene in England, and just the birth of the fantasy genre. And we're just talking about all kinds of things, but also it also just happened. Is your birthday is like right around the corner, right?
Yeah, it's next week, Wednesday, I think it is. Yeah, we were in DC briefly, just we came back from France via Washington. But yeah, we wouldn't have been in any condition to have seen you.
Sure.
To tell you the truth, it's only just occurred to me we could probably have had a brief meal. I'm not sure where you are, but we were out, of course, by the airport. And
yeah, I'm about 30 minutes away.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Anyway, next time I like going through DC, so we might do that again next time. I'll let you know in advance next time we do it.
Well, maybe
Just
next time for sure. And
Yeah.
I wanted to say, happy birthday, early happy birthday.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to remind our viewers out there just who you are. Michael Moorcock, one of my literary heroes, one of the grandmasters of the fantasy genre. You were there during the birth of the birth of the genre itself. From the very beginning, you've influenced an entire generation of writers, fantasy writers, filmmakers, comic books, role-playing games, going on 60 years now. But you're also a huge music fan, and we love to talk about music. And the last time we were talking, you were working on these Spirits Burning albums.
Oh yeah.
And
Yes.
you were working on the End of All Songs Part 2. Do you have any updates on that?
No, I don't actually. To tell you the truth, I can't even remember if I did anything yet. I'm not sure I've done anything on it yet.
Okay.
They take a while. They take a while to get together, because basically Don Falcon's putting it together from people all over the world, really. So he has to
Right.
get all the musicians doing different parts and so on. But it's I'm very pleased with the way it's going, I must say. But I as I say, I don't think I've got no memory. Well, I've never had much of a memory. No, I haven't done anything new on it yet.
Well, they're great. They're great epic albums. So I'm excited for the Part 2 when it comes out.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very good finale to the set. It's a great project.
Well, what about? I know you were working with Alan Davey as well. Has
Well, yeah,
that materialized?
Well, since I've been, I haven't really. A lot of stuff's been put back, both for Alan and for me. So we haven't really done much else about that yet. I'm still looking forward to it. I haven't got any news on any of that at all, really. I haven't written any new songs. I haven't performed any new songs that I recall. Mostly, I've just been working on the book, since since I was in France. In fact, the whole time I was in France, pretty much, I worked on that and some graphic novel stuff that we're doing as well. Which
You want to
the French...
talk about the new book? You said it's semi-autobiographical.
Yeah, no, this is the new one that's just come out.
Okay.
But it's a reprint. I mean, it's two novels in one, and it's that's Von Beck, and it's The Warhound and the World's Pain, and The City in the Autumn Stars, both of which are set in real historical periods. The one I'm working on, the last one, that will be my last Whitefriars book, which I'm sorry, I'm working on a whole lot of different things. I'm supposed to do short stories, and I've got all these various jobs that I took on, and said, sure, I can do that. And now the deadlines are getting very close.
Sure.
But anyway, yeah, I finished the first draft of The Wounds of Albion, which is the final book of Whitechapel, which is the autobiographical one. And it's not.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it's not an autobiographical novel. It's a novel with autobiography in it. In that the autobiography is real. It's not me basing fiction on real life. It's the best I can remember, And I decided to do it that way because it's because memory is so unreliable. I mean, all our memories are unreliable. Just two people being married, they've got entirely different versions of the same event, and will go to their deaths believing them. So I decided to put it in a fiction context so that it can be seen, in that light. Anyway, I finished it, and I was very pleased with it. I was almost crowing, which is always a very bad sign. I mean, a really bad sign. And then when Linda and I looked at it again, I realized it was a pile of toss. It was terrible. And I think it's a very difficult book to write. Because you're addressing your own guilt as well as everything else, if in your life, and I've got things to feel guilty about. And then what happens is a dialogue starts inside your head saying, no, you're not so guilty, and then you start writing more or less praising yourself, sort of putting the case for, as it were. And I realized it was just coming out as that bit. It was either me breastbeating, or it was me saying what good things I'd done, and both of which were pretty horrible. I mean, this wasn't the whole book, but there were parts of the book like this. So I'm rewriting it. In other words, I've only really started to rewrite it since we got back to Texas, and Linda said it's the worst piece of writing of mine she's ever read. So I think, and she's usually right, because she'll tell me if it's good, but she'll also tell me she's the best editor I could possibly have. That's usually the way it is. You need to have somebody who's not afraid to tell you that you're shit. And in this case, it's a very difficult book. I mean, I don't mean that it's difficult to read. The last thing I want is for it to be difficult to read. So, but it would be difficult to read if I left it as it is. So I'm just redoing the whole thing. So it's about 150,000 words that I'm also cutting it. as I said to a friend of mine, it's machete work. You know, you have to take a serious machete to the prose and cut out huge chunks. And
well,
not be
I must, you know, it takes a lot of courage to be honest with yourself and to have that kind of self-awareness. So, you know, it
yeah, I
really,
guess so. It's
you
also
know, I
just
mean,
professionalism.
it shows your character as a person that, you know, you're able to look deep inside yourself and be honest with yourself.
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
Mm,
The trouble is, every time I look a bit deeper, and it's I think of something else.
mm,
And that was part of the problem with the book. I kept thinking of new things to put into it, and
mm,
that's not good when you're actually, when you're actually in the middle of writing it. It
mm.
became pretty much a rag bag. So anyway, I'd hoped to have that finished last year, but I'll have it finished this year. I would imagine by spring, at least. Yeah, easily by spring. I
And
say that.
you always have Linda to keep you honest. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
sure.
that's important. No, I mean,
Yeah.
my second wife, who unfortunately, well, they're both now dead. My first two wives, I had nothing to do with it. They one was pretty good, the first one, but the second one, Jill, she never liked to say that she didn't like something. So it was always a little bit, I couldn't, I couldn't entirely trust her on that, on that
Mm,
front. And Linda, I can trust entirely. Hillary, I could trust too, but that was, it was a long, long time ago. She was another writer, and she had sort of clear ideas about writing. But Linda's the very best editor I've ever had. I mean, she is fierce, and it's horrible. It's a very nasty, bloody business when she attacks a book.
mm.
There are bits of red all over this manuscript where she said, "Good God, what the hell do you think you were doing here?" and so forth. It's like being back at school. Not that I was ever at school for long enough to get that, but still, you know
Mm.
what I mean, I'm sure.
Right.
Anyway,
Well,
yeah, I haven't really got a lot more on, except new books coming out. Mark Hodder and I have been writing what you might call 20th century Elric books. I've done this before, but we took Elric. The inspiration for Elric was a guy called Zenith the Albino, and we're writing essentially new Zenith books, novels, with it clear that he's a sort of reincarnation of Elric, and the a guy called the Metaphysical Detective that I've written a few short stories about, and he was in the Multiverse comic as well. The Multiverse comic has just been reissued, and the colors are just wonderful. They've done a great job on the colors for that. And he's in that anyway. That's Seton Begg, the metatemporal detective. And in the first novel, called, I think, The Albino's Secret, or it might be The Albino's Honor. They're all called The Albino's something. Is set in Romania, and this sort of strange little kingdom which the guy comes from, and it's clearly, or I think it would be clear to obviously to an Elric reader, that it goes back to into the dim past and to Elric's ancestry. So and they're enjoyable to write. I mean, Mark Hodder's a very good collaborator, and he's better probably at detectives or thrillers. It's not really a detective story as much as a thriller, than I am, and he can structure them better. So, because I don't read many thrillers, I've never been a great reader of those, except for Sexton Blake. and so Mark is really doing the heavy lifting on those, but they're essentially Elric books in disguise, with Zenith being the descendant of Elric, I suppose.
Well, I talked to Jim from Dreaming City, our friend from Dreaming City.
Yes,
and he said that you're working on a Elric Conan team up for Titan.
Oh yeah, Titan. Nick Landau, when I was in England, he said, would you be interested in doing another Elric Conan team up? And I said, yeah, I like the idea. And particularly at the time, I didn't have any major work on, because I thought I'd finished this other book. But so I've been thinking it through. We're still working out terms, believe it or not, because I just want to know basically what their terms are. And the guys in Scandinavia who now own the Conan, whatever you call it, brand, won't tell me what the details that I need before I can start. So I'm still working that out. But I've worked out the story, and the story is going to be set essentially in North America, or North America, and on a huge river which is based on the Mississippi, but is bigger than the Mississippi, wider than the Mississippi, which I know fairly well. So that'll feel right. And I keep having new ideas for it. So I think once it does come out, one thing I want to do is put some clothes on Conan. For some reason, the people who draw Conan are always drawing him in a loincloth as if he's some kind of Tarzan, whereas basically where he comes from, a loincloth, he wouldn't last 5 minutes. He'd be a frozen statue.
Thick skin.
Yeah, right. So I want to put some nice clothes on Conan for a change. And I want to have some good relationship between him and Elric. I think it's coming together. The longer I put it off, and I am putting it off to a degree, because they're waiting for me to say how much I want, and I'm waiting for them to tell me how much they're going to pay me. And this is not really a commercial venture, but I need to know,
Sure.
And it's going to be quite a long. I think it's going to be 88 pages, so it's going to be quite a long job once I take it on. And essentially, I have taken it on. It's just that we haven't come to terms yet. And I don't know quite why they don't want to tell me how much they want to pay. I mean, it's a strange thing. They probably think that they can't afford me, and I probably think they can't afford me either. But there's another, that I'm not sure about, because I'm not really doing it for the money. But it's sort of just, but again, I leave all that to agents and managers. So that's really how that's, I'm not really directly involved in that. They could probably have it for free if it wouldn't be the first thing I've done for free. I'm not sure I ever got paid for the first one, the Marvel one. I probably didn't actually.
That one goes. That goes way back.
Yeah, I mean, I did that for fun. I knew Roy
years.
Thomas. Yeah, and Roy, I knew Roy, really working relationship. I didn't know Roy personally, but I knew him pretty well. Yeah, and he wanted a Conan Elric crossover, mainly because he wanted to do an Elric comic, which of course he did do later for First. And so Jim Cawthorne and I did that comic. We worked that out, and Roy did the script, but we did the outline and the story.
It's fantastic, a classic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm hoping to. I also want to explain the pointy hat. Yeah, in in the
Sure.
Conan, in the first Conan, he's got this weird pointy hat that Barry Smith drew on him, and Barry got it from a guy called Jack. What's Jack's name? Anyway, the guy who did the first covers of the very first American Elric books. And for some reason, this guy, Jack, who I knew, but I can't remember his second name. Anyway, the guy who did the covers, he didn't have much of a brief for them. He was just told that this guy was a wizard with a sword. So his idea of a wizard was a guy in a pointy hat. And so he put this pointy hat on the cover. Barry, again, not having any description, took the pointy hat from Jack's pointy hat and put it on the Marvel character. And then the guy in Canada who did Cerebus the Aardvark, who had an Elric character, a comic Elric character in that, he put the pointy hat on him, and so this pointy hat has been a source of some discussion for many years now. So I'm going to try and explain how he got the pointy hat, and I'm going to leave off the pointy hat as soon as I possibly can as well. So anyway, yeah, so I'm going to enjoy that. And I make notes every so often, and it's building into quite a decent story, I think. Good Conan story and a good Elric story together, which is what I want them to be, obviously. I don't want to just do a kind of, a weak mixture of, I want to make it a good, good for both characters.
Well, I'm sure a lot of comic book fans are really excited for that. That'll be awesome. To have that pairing again after 50 years, that's really exciting.
Yeah. And I've got to read some Conan because I haven't read any Conan for a long time. I mean, not a full story. I've occasionally read it, a couple of pages. I still like Howard. At his best, he was really very, very good. And so I'm going to have to read a couple of Conan stories again and all of that before I really get into it. But yeah, enjoyable. As for everything else, I don't know. I mean, I've been in Paris for the last 6 months, till last month, and it was nice seeing James, and I inscribed every book. That I gave him some books when he was in Paris, and for some reason it was a glitch in my head. I'd been doing some other work with somebody else. I inscribed every book to him as to Richard, and I presented him these books. Every one of them is to Richard, and
I have one right here.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. That's it. Yeah. And I just, I don't know what got into me because I knew his name was James. There he was facing me as well. But I did it. I wrote in the books before I went to see him at Les Acolytes, which is the restaurant cafe that I pretty much always use, and it's only when I got there that I realized, to my horror, that I'd been calling him Richard only through that period when I was signing the books. I just don't know what it was. Maybe because he came from I think my brother-in-law is Richard, and his I don't know. He's moved to Virginia. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I just don't know. But anyway, I'm glad you got the Lemmy. Yeah.
Well, I read it. I read the story, and it's you talk about how he's this archetypal rogue with a heart of gold, and it's funny that narrative runs through many people's stories about Lemmy.
I saw the same thing in the book. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad they did, actually, because that's really what Lemmy was like. I mean, he just was he was a really good bloke, and when he was very shy when when I first met him.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was either shy because it was us, you know. I met him at the same time as he joined the band when he was auditioning for the band.
Mm-hmm.
There's a venue called Middle Earth, which lets you do rehearsals and stuff. And I think, in fact, they closed down by this time. But anyway, it's still a rehearsal place. And we went down there to. I went down there actually with a bass player who was going to rehearse for the job, a guy called Curtis. And when we got there, Lemmy was already there. He was already playing, and it was obvious, you know, that the job was taken. And it was the usual rock and roll, you know, cock up. It's like, you know, oh, sorry, man, we just hired this guy. You know, it's like, oh, sorry, man, you're fired. You know, it goes like that in rock and roll. And
The biz.
yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
so that's how Lemmy. And at that point, he was still very very shy, and a strange mixture, really. I think I've said in that book how my first wife, who was very middle class and extremely unsure about rock and roll bands, you know, particularly Hawkwind, of course, and particularly Lemmy. And so they were all coming to stay at the house. We had a house up in Yorkshire, and so the band all turned up, and she was not, you know, she was a nice woman, so she was perfectly, you know, pleasant to them, but she was still a little bit nervous. What's going to happen here? You know, with this crowd of space roughnecks, and,
vagabonds.
Yes, yeah. And when she got up in the morning, the first thing she saw was Lemmy, who'd got the kettle on and was making tea for everybody, and he was lighting all the fires in the. It was a cold house. It was in Yorkshire, and had got all the domestic stuff, you know, that she would normally do or I would normally do, and Lemmy had got it all running. And that's really what he was like. I mean, he was basically just a. He you know, you could honestly, if you were a girl, you could take him to your old granny and she'd approve of him, you know. So he was a sweet guy. We got out of touch. We corresponded for quite some time by email, but then it gradually fell away, and so I didn't really see much of him in the last few years, in spite of us not being that far away. I mean, not that far away by Texas standards, not that far away anyway.
Right.
Yeah, he was a good guy. I'm glad you got the book anyway, and I'll call you yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, speaking of Hawkwind, I just wanted to switch gears a little bit and tell you that I just went to a festival. I visited a friend in England, and we went to this festival called A New Day Festival.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they had all kinds of bands playing, and one of the Saturday night band was Hawkwind.
Oh,
And
good.
I'd seen them over here in the States back in the early 90s, but I'd never seen them in their home country, on their home turf, as it were. And it was really fantastic. It was very psychedelic. The crowd was really getting into it. But I wanted to tell you a couple of the songs that they played. I was surprised that they played Assault and Battery. Let me see, where is that? Off this.
Yeah.
Assault and Battery on the
Yeah.
Golden Void.
Mhm.
They played Arrival in Utopia off Choose Your Masks.
Yeah.
You Better Believe It off of Hall of the Mountain Grill, and Master of the Universe.
Mhm.
But it was cool that they played. They played more Michael Moorcock type stuff than I would have expected. So
Well, yeah.
that was a neat little cosmic synchronicity, if you will.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think at least one of those songs Dave claimed for himself. So I'm not complaining about it, but the Golden Boy for sure. He credited himself with that one. And so some of them, I doubt if I'll be getting any royalties for it, put it that way. But yeah, it's nice to know that they're still
You have the gold record.
I do, that's true.
Well, and there was another interesting guy that played there, Eric Broughton from Edgar Broughton from the
Edgar Broughton, yeah, band. Absolutely, yeah.
And that was, it was just him and an acoustic guitar, and he was playing, and he was telling stories. He talked about how there was a Deviants reunion in like 2013, and he was there. It was Edgar Broughton band and the Deviants and some other band, and Mick Farron basically, passed away backstage. Yeah. He told the whole story. It was very heavy, very wild story.
Yeah. Edgar Broughton was Mal Dean, who drew the Jerry Cornelius. He's the sort of iconic Jerry Cornelius picture maker. I don't know what he drew Jerry Cornelius anyway for a long time. Did covers of books and stuff like that, and was in New Worlds a lot. Mal, that's something, of course, that I've done this year. But anyway, Mal did a great poster for the Edgar Broughton band. Really one of the best rock and roll posters I ever saw. And I left it behind when I moved out of that Yorkshire house, and I still regret it. It was a great, it was a very good poster. But I never actually met Edgar Broughton, in spite of our circles being very close and moving together quite a lot. As you know, I was a big admirer of Mick Farron, and I knew a lot of the Deviants and the Fairies, and because we were virtually interchangeable.
Right. There was that scene that everybody was like knew each other.
Yeah, and we played together, and Twink, for instance, drummed for almost everybody at some point, and so on. So yeah, even Martin Stone, my partner, now dead. Martin played in the Fairies for a short while, I hardly know anybody who wasn't part of that. It was almost like 3 or 4 bands who could swap membership if they wanted to. I did an issue, a special issue of New Worlds. I haven't got it here, unfortunately. I don't know what I did with it. 60th. It was the 60th anniversary since I took over the magazine. Not the 60th anniversary of the magazine, but the 60th. And so I spent a lot of the summer involved in doing that issue, which turned out to be a nightmare in terms of personalities. And reminded me why I didn't want to do any more issues of New Worlds. It was really it exhausted me. But I think the result was I'm glad about. I like the result. It's a nice looking issue, and New Worlds is continuing through PS Press as a paperback, but I wanted to do one last issue of the full size, full magazine that we used to do, with all the graphics and so on. So that's out now, and I'm sorry I didn't bring a copy, or anyway, it's online all over the place anyway. So you probably you can see it there, and we went through 3 changes of designer in doing the magazine. 2 dropped out for different reasons, and I finally got the best designer actually I could have got, which was a guy called John Coulthard, and John's done stuff with Hawkwind too. He's done records, sleeves, and so Works with Alan Moore a lot, and has done, did this, I think it's called Book of Magic, Alan's latest book about magic. Not The Great When, which is his book about London, which is also very good. Highly recommended. Alan Moore. It doesn't hardly needs any recommendation, of course.
I was going to say, one of the other things I was going to say is just to follow up. I go to a record show every month, and I met a guy, Dave Hoffer. He was in the scene back in Baltimore. He was a sound man, and so he did sound for every band that came through town. And one of his favorite bands in the early 70s was Hawkwind. He would go see them every time. He did sound for them. He met Lemmy, he met all the cats there. And his alias is Microdot Man. He was quite a prolific drug user, dealer back in the day. So that's his nickname. And he sells all, records, but he also sells all kinds of really wild, kind of psychedelic, like counterculture type of artifacts. And just last month, I'm going to show you, this is pretty amazing. He was selling these, and he said that they handed them out at Hawkwind shows, and you were supposed to wear them on your face. He says he has a photograph of an audience wearing hundreds of these masks. I don't know if you remember.
Can't see it very well. There's a glare. Oh yeah, gotcha. Oh, I see. Yeah, I've never seen that. I can see how it's a mask, though. Yeah.
It's a mask.
What a
you
good idea.
cut it out, and you tie it on you like a little, like a ribbon or yarn or whatever.
Yeah.
And he gave me one of these.
Oh, good. Very
nice. Pretty incredible. It belongs in a museum. A Hawkwind museum or some kind of psychedelic museum or something. But he has all kinds of crazy stuff like that.
Hawkwind is a museum these days. The band's been going so long. It's amazing. Excuse me, just a second. I will be back. It's the cat.
Well, I mean, that's funny that you already kind of answered my question, because one of my questions is which was like one of your favorite authors, or also ones that might have inspired you when you were younger. But you said you appreciate Alan Moore style.
Well, Alan came after me, as it were, in terms of career.
Sure.
But I do like Alan's work a lot. But in terms of inspiration, I mean, I think the writer that most inspired me to write fantasy, apart from Edgar Rice Burroughs, who I was reading from a very early age, and I've just done an introduction to a new edition of Princess of Mars, and it's still it's amazing how well it stands up. It's extremely
amazing.
It's very good stuff. Anyway, so. That was one thing, but Poul Anderson was the other one. I mean, I didn't have much in common with Poul, who was somewhat right-wing, and as a science fiction writer, I didn't really read him much at all. But as a fantasy writer, I think he came into his own, and it's just a shame he didn't write more fantasy. But he wrote a book called The Broken Sword, which is really the main influence on Elric. And it came out at exactly the same time that the Lord of the Rings was coming out, The Broken Sword, in the mid-50s. And I read that before I read Lord of the Rings. And to me, sorry, there's a cat. Lizzie, what you up to? Anyway, yes, I know. And so when I came to read Lord of the Rings, it seemed very, very weak stuff to me compared to, excuse me, that was the cat. it seemed it just didn't have the same power as Paul Anderson's Broken Sword, and which I would recommend to everybody. I think it's one of the great classics
Interesting.
of whatever you call it, supernatural fantasy,
High
supernatural.
fantasy. Well, I
like to call it supernatural adventure fiction because it has to have those two elements. It has to have a lot of supernatural stuff in it, obviously, and it has to have adventure in it. It's got to be, in that. Anyway, that's just me.
Well, that's a perfect segue because we touched on it a little bit previously, but I wanted to ask you. You said when you were younger, you did a fanzine, a Tolkien fanzine, and you went to interview him.
Not a Tolkien fanzine, no. I never did a Tolkien fanzine. It's a Burroughs fanzine. Yeah.
Well, what was it?
Edgar Rice Burroughs fanzine.
Oh, Burroughs. Okay. Is that what it was called? Is that what the fanzine was called?
Yes. Yeah. And I did that from the age of 14, just before I left school. I left school when I was 15. And I tried to sell it at school, but nobody was really interested in it at the time. And that was the first.
Do you have any
issue.
left?
No, I never did. One or two people have sent me one or two copies over the years. They've sort of turned up, but I think they probably. I used to throw everything into a big box, which would then go to the Bodleian Library in Oxford. This was sort of, they'd asked me for my papers, so that's what I did. Or the other thing I did was, I don't know if you've heard of TAF, which is the Transatlantic Fan Fund, and it was set up in the 40s, I think, when air travel was very, very expensive, to send one science fiction fan to the World Convention in America, and one from England to America. And then the next year it would be from America to England. And it was all done by contributions from fans. They would put the money in, and we'd send whoever was chosen off to represent us in the States, or they did vice versa. And so what I used to do was, before the Bodleian came along, and while I was while TAF was still a thing, I would have this big box, and I'd put all my papers into this box, and then then seal it up, and then I'd give it to TAF, so they could auction the stuff. So it means that people were able to buy Elric manuscripts for about 5 pence. Depending on the auctioneer and what the auction was giving, and also various fanzines and stuff like that. I just didn't keep anything. I didn't really have the room to keep much stuff in the early days.
Sure.
So that happened, and then a bit later, stuff started to go to the Bodleian Library. So it's either in those issues of Parasiana. There were, I think, 18 of them. They either went, and I did other fanzines as well. They either went to help pay for TAF, or they went to the Bodleian. You know how, I'm sure you do know this, periodically over one's life, you get tired of something, or you're not interested in something, and it's a relatively short time, but you're just not. So you either swap it for something that you are at that point interested in, or sell it, or give it to somebody, or whatever. And that's what I was doing. So all the first edition Conan books, for instance, which Gnome Press did, which I had the full set. I think I sold for $1 each to Foyle's second-hand department when I was broke one year, because obviously the my early days I wasn't always making money, and I had a family to keep fairly soon in my early 20s. So So a lot of my stuff went, got dispersed in that way. So I haven't got in spite of the huge amount of junk I now have, I mean, just an enormous amount of clutter and papers and magazines and, all the rest of it. I don't have anything really. I don't have much since about 1990, I think, which, and now I've started to give the stuff to Texas A&M, so they're getting all of the stuff that I really haven't got room to keep. If you could see my office, which is a big office, and a shed we had specially built called the Shed of Shame, which is there to store all my copies. That's filled up. It's filled up to the brim. My office is filled up to the brim. I mean, it's the usual. I mean, every reader knows this. You just get too many and too much, and so I'm thinking of having maybe a big sale on all the stuff in the Shed of Shame and see if I can make some space that way. But it's.
I'm sure Jim would be interested.
Oh yeah. Actually, yeah, that's true. Jim should come down and have a look at all that stuff.
The Shed of Shame.
Yeah, the Shed of Shame.
I'll tell him about it. I'll give him a tip on it. I'll let him know.
Yeah, okay, yes, that'd be good.
Well, we did ask one question previously, and I figured I'd ask you again just in case maybe something else came up. But we always ask people about, it's called the writer question, about like, what's the strangest writer you've ever had or ever seen? And you said at one time it was, I don't know, was it health food or something like that back in the 70s? I can't remember exactly what you said, but I figured if I asked you again this time, it might trigger a different memory, or you might remember
you probably
something
will,
else.
Ask me again. So what's the question?
Writer, writer, like what bands ask for, the writer, like, we want a bottle of Jack Daniels and we want a pizza and that kind of stuff.
Mostly, we didn't do that much, to tell you the truth. I mean, we weren't that kind of band. We didn't we didn't insist on 15 bottles of Perrier being on tap at all that kind of stuff. It really didn't go with our image, I think. I mean, our self-image. I don't just mean the public image. In terms of Hawkwind, we'd always, whenever we could, we'd go into the pub nearest the gig, and it was a sort of a double motive, if you like. Well, one of the reasons was we got to meet the fans on equal terms. We were all we were all drinking in the same pub and just chatting to fans, and of course they would buy you drinks. So that was the other part of the motive. You get free drinks.
Sure.
So really, I mean, we didn't need to put a rider in, really, because we got what we wanted, which was contact with the fans and free drinks. But I can't remember anything like that, except, as you said, health food. Nicky was very strong on health food. He got more and more like that. There was a point when he would actually eat anything. He was known as the gannet. I mean, because be a squawk and your ice cream was gone. But he became more and more more and more involved with health food and eating healthily. And as you know, he had a farm in Wales, and Dave was very similar. Not quite as I don't know, faddy as Nick was, but he was interested in that sort of thing as well. So it's more to do with brown rice than it was to do with having
Brown acid.
Yeah. Well, to tell you the truth, it was me that had a rider, not as a band but as a person. For during the I shouldn't be saying this really, but let's say this is a piece of fiction that I heard about myself, that I would only do a signing for a minimum of half a gram of coke up. So if it was a small signing, half a gram was all right. If it was a bigger signing, a gram would do. And I remember getting to a signing in Los Angeles, and they hadn't taken me seriously. They said, "Well, we've got this dope. We got this." No. I said, and there was a crew in those days. I used to have big crowds that went round the block, as it were, and they're all waiting outside, and I wouldn't go out there until they'd found me my half a gram or gram or whatever. And I think I reduced it to half a gram because they were having so much trouble finding it, which was bizarre in Los Angeles.
Right.
That
the 70s and 80s, right?
Yeah, it was the 80s. I think it was it was 70s and 80s or 80s. I can't remember exactly when it was. It was at I think it was a Change of Hobbit was the store in LA, and so I sat there waiting while they had minions going out all over LA trying to score the coke.
They should have been able to find it down the street. It should have been everywhere.
Exactly,
right?
I know they were very naive. I was surprised, but anyway, there it was. Not that I ever did any of that stuff ever.
Right, of course.
Right, of course. And actually, I haven't done anything like that for many years now. But
it was the 70s, so it was a different time.
Yeah,
but,
well, I'll tell you a funny story, and that is that I'm eligible in Texas. Marijuana is illegal unless it's for medical reasons, and
Sure.
I have a genuine medical condition that the marijuana I'm allowed to get marijuana for, so I can
Sure.
get it legally, and do get it legally. But I then discovered around the same time that this news came through that I was legally able to have marijuana, that I'm allergic to marijuana. I started feeling sick and losing a lot of weight and throwing up and stuff, and I said to my doctor, I said, what the hell's the matter with me? And she said, marijuana allergy. And I didn't know there was such a thing, but there was such a thing.
Either. Wow.
And when I stopped it, the allergy went away. I mean, the whole thing went away. So now I can have the occasional gummy, which I still do get because it's good for pain and I can sleep. But I can't actually sit there and roll up a big joint and go to the land of dreams anymore. It doesn't work for me anymore. It's a great irony.
Right. Of doing it all through the 60s and 70s, and then it just is one of those things like a switch goes off.
Yeah. Well, it also, I mean, the drugs got bad by the mid 80s, I would say. Certainly in England, where I was in England most of the time then, they started to cut the stuff with all kinds of crap, and it just got harder and harder to find anything worth having. The best coke I ever had was from a dealer who was recommended, and she was the Rolling Stones dealer, and I said, wow, this is really good stuff. she came around to visit me, and I said, it's great stuff. It's nice to know that the Stones are getting, such good stuff. She said, "Oh, the Stones aren't getting this quality." She said, "This is the good stuff."
This is the good stuff.
So she was selling the Stones the crap, and keeping the good stuff for herself and friends. I don't know where she is now. I lent her my first edition signed of Mervyn Peake's Titus Groan, which is one of my most treasured books, and I haven't seen her since that.
You haven't
so
seen it since.
No, I haven't. It was stupid of me, but I've done that quite a lot in my life. Oh, you must read this, and obviously, since it's the only copy you've got, you lend it to somebody, and bingo, sure. There it goes. Yeah.
Very generous.
Anyway.
Well, I just wanted to say, do you have any last words for your fans out there?
Last words? I'm not quite dead yet, but not really. I mean,
final words.
I'm glad there's been a sort of resurgence of interest in my work in America. Just this last year, largely I think because of Saga's Simon and Schuster's publishing of the books. They've done it so well. They're probably the first really. There's a guy called Joe Monty who's the editor there, and he's put a lot into doing these books very well. He's done it with other writers, Ursula Le Guin, and other writers of if you like, my generation. And there's this kind of book, and it's probably is hard to see, but there's a certain authority about a book that's nicely bound and and solid, and with a good cover on it and so on, that helps it sell in the bookshops. So whatever is happening, these books are selling probably better than anything that's sold for quite a while for me in America. So it's sort of a nice. Well,
it has those maps. You showed us those maps earlier.
Yeah,
the maps are.
Well, they've all got maps. I mean, all of the Elric books have maps, and so that these are in the same style as the Elric books. So and they're also doing Mother London, which is a non-fantasy book of mine, which was the book that won the Whitbread Prize and then didn't. I was phoned in the evening to say that Mother London had won the Whitbread Prize, which is probably the most prestigious prize, literary prize in
Congratulations.
England. But then I was phoned the next morning by the same guy. He was one of the judges, and he shouldn't have told me this to begin with, really, because it was going to be announced the next day. And he said that a woman called Faye Weldon, who's a friend of Salman Rushdie's, this is before any of the Rushdie stuff had started to happen.
Controversy, yeah.
That she had said, Salman will never forgive me if I don't vote for him. So she changed her vote, and it was crucial. So it meant that I'd won the Whitbread Prize, if you like, on the Monday, and by the Tuesday I hadn't won the Whitbread Prize. So it was a very strange. I didn't even know I was up for it, to tell you the truth. I had no idea that it was in the shortlist. There were only 3 books. There was a Rushdie, a Bruce Chatwind, and mine. And so anyway, Mother London, that's the book, and it's one of my own favorite books, and people like it quite a bit. There's no real fantasy in it. There's a few there's a little bit of possible fantasy, but not really. But it's mostly about it's mostly a sort of a paean to my own city, to my home city. and people like it because it's warm. I think, you know, it's got a lot of nice characters in it and stuff. So they're bringing that out again, and they're doing the albino books, the new albino books. So I'm very, at the moment, things are looking, you know, nice in terms of publishing for me in the States.
Excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, I just have one final thing to say.
I'll probably remember half of what I'll probably remember half of what I, you know, half of what I haven't said today when we switch off. But yeah, it's always nice talking to you. I'm sorry I haven't got more definite news. You know.
Well, I know I'd like to talk more, but I know Linda's going to come through the door any minute now. So
well, you don't have to worry too much, because I think, if I'm right, she's out getting my prescription, actually. So
okay,
that's not too bad. But I don't think there's much else. I mean, we talked about the Conan Elric link up. I told you about about Von Beck and New Worlds.
Of course, and we would always love to have you on again for another Eternal Tales of Michael Moorcock.
Well, and then I'll be 85. I'll be 85 next week, so that's not actually a bad run. I was quite pleased with that. What I'm hoping to do is beat Brian Aldiss. There used to be three of us that were all grouped together, you know, Jimmy Ballard, Brian Aldiss, and me. And Jimmy, of course, got cancer, so he died pretty young. But Brian got to, I think, 93 before I got a letter from him, actually. The same day I received the letter, the same day that he actually died. We were all very good friends and sort of rivals in a but perfectly pleasant way. I mean, we didn't hate one another at all. So with a bit of luck, I'm trying to beat Brian. You know, I'm trying to make it maybe another 10 years.
You're gonna do it. God bless you, my friend. You will. It'll happen. You know. But that's a good run, man. That's a good run.
Yes, that's true. It is a good run. As I used to say when people said, you know, how do you manage to put out so many books? You know, because it seemed like I was putting out a book a week at one time in the 60s. And I said, it's just good peasant genes, you know, and fast typing speeds. They used to be my two allies. And I think if you're physically very healthy, it does help an awful lot to do all that. Anyway, yeah, let's talk again when I hope I'll have more substantial stuff to tell you.
Sure.
I enjoy talking to you, and I'll give that story a proper read too. I'm sorry that I haven't sort of, you know, read
the Percival.
Well,
yeah.
To be honest, I haven't read anything. I mean, it's not just.
I know you're very busy. You're very busy.
Well, I'm not so much busy as confused at the moment. but I'm getting back there. So I'll let you know anyway, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. I mean, as soon as there's something to talk about.
Well, we always have something to talk about. I'll just reach out to Linda, and we'll set up our next segment of the continuing Eternal Tales of Michael Moorcock. But I just have one final thing to say, and that's I wanted to end the show by saying I dedicate this show to all of my old friends at RPG Central, Knights of the Prime Material Plane, the Dreaming City Fellowship, my little sister Lisa, and my soulmate Wendy. Remember, look to the stars, carry that torch of enlightenment, and strive to be a disciple of rock and roll and the Brotherhood of Orpheus.
Absolutely. Peace.
How long journey to the middle?